The stars above looked closer than the person he missed. Adrian sat by the viewing window of the orbital station, staring at the scattered lights of faraway systems. Somewhere out there, past trade lanes, dust clouds, and months of travel, was her, Lyra, his friend, his anchor, the one who made the cold void feel alive. But she was gone now. Not gone in death, but gone in distance. She had moved to a colony world 3 sectors away, chasing a new life, a new duty. She had left with a smile, telling him she would write. That distance was just numbers on a chart. At the time, he believed her. Now, months later, her silence felt heavier than gravity. Adrian pressed his palm against the glass. The cold seeped into his skin. He wondered if she remembered him when she walked under her planet's skies, if she thought of him when she breathed air that wasn't filtered by machines. The thought made his chest ache. He had messages drafted. Hundreds of them. Long letters, short notes, even clumsy jokes. But he never sent them. What if she had moved on? What if his words were only chains pulling her back to something she wanted to leave? He could not bear to know that. So he stayed silent, and silence built walls higher than any distance. Still, he carried hope. Humans were strange that way, stubborn even in sorrow. Other species in the station looked at him with confusion. To them, bonds weakened when stretched. Distance meant the end, but not for humans. For humans, distance was just a challenge, a storm to outlast, a mountain to climb. One night, he wandered the quiet corridors of the station. Outside the glass, stars turned slowly, patient and eternal. His mind replayed old memories, laughter echoing in dusty ship corridors, her voice teasing him when he fumbled with tools, the way she looked at the stars as if she could read their stories. He whispered to the empty hall, "I miss you." His words dissolved into the air. Unheard, but speaking them gave him strength. That night, Adrian sat at his console and forced himself to open one of the unsent letters. His fingers shook as he read it. It was simple, clumsy, and raw. "Lyra, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Things feel empty without you here. The station is quieter. I keep looking at the stars and wondering if you're looking too. I hope you're happy. I hope you didn't forget me." He almost deleted it. His thumb hovered over the key. Fear burned in him. Fear of rejection, fear of silence, fear of knowing she no longer cared. But then another thought struck him. What if she was waiting for him? What if she thought he was the one who had forgotten? Humans, after all, had a strange gift. They reached across gulfs that others called impossible. They built bridges from nothing but faith. Adrian hit send. For a long while, he just sat there, his heart racing. The console blinked once. Message sent, out into the void, carried by machines faster than any ship. A single fragile thread of connection stretched across the distance. He didn't know if she would reply. He didn't know if silence would answer him again. But for the first time in months, he felt lighter. Hope had returned, not in a dramatic gesture, not in a sudden miracle, but in the simple act of reaching out. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. Somewhere, light years away, his words were traveling toward her. Maybe she would smile. Maybe she would cry. Maybe she would write back. And even if she didn't, he knew this truth. Humanity's strength was not in never being alone, but in always daring to seek each other again. Distance was vast, but human hope was vaster still. Adrian looked at the stars again, and this time they felt just a little closer. The new world was bright, but to her it felt dim. Lyra stood on the balcony of her small home, staring out at the horizon of the colony. The sky burned a soft violet at sunset, and the air carried the scent of living trees, so different from recycled oxygen on the station. Everyone around her spoke of opportunity, of building a fresh future. They smiled when they talked about freedom, but inside she felt a quiet ache, because freedom also meant leaving someone behind. She thought of Adrian more often than she admitted, even to herself. On the station, he had been her closest friend, the one who laughed when things went wrong, the one who stayed awake with her during long shifts, the one who believed in her when others only saw flaws. They had shared silence that was comfortable, and conversations that ran endlessly. Now there was only silence, and it was anything but comfortable. She checked her communicator every evening, hoping for a message. A small note, a clumsy joke, a simple hello, but the screen stayed empty, and so she told herself stories to explain it. Maybe he was busy, maybe he had forgotten. Maybe it had been easier for him to let her go. The thoughts hurt, but she kept them close because they were better than admitting she missed him too much. One evening, she sat on her balcony with a cup of warm tea, staring at the stars. They looked different from here, brighter, scattered in strange patterns. Somewhere among them was the station she had left behind. Somewhere among them was him. She whispered, "Do you ever look this way?" Her neighbors wouldn't understand. For the Kareen, for the other settlers, bonds ended when paths diverged. Out of sight meant out of heart. But Lyra was human, and humans were stubborn in love, in friendship, in hope. Distance could stretch them, but it rarely broke them. She picked up her console and scrolled through half-written drafts. Letters she had started for Adrian but never finished. Letters she was too afraid to send. Adrian, I miss our talks. Adrian, the sky here is beautiful but empty without you. Adrian, do you think of me? Every time she read the drafts, she hesitated. What if she sent them and he never replied? What if he thought she had grown weak, clinging to the past? The fear of rejection was a chain heavy enough to keep her still. And yet, humans were never still for long. That night she closed her eyes and remembered the sound of his voice. His calm strength, his quiet belief that things could always get better. He had always been the one to push her forward, to remind her that despair was not the end but the middle of a story. Her console beeped, her eyes snapped open. The message alert blinked faintly in the corner of the screen. For a moment she didn't move. Her breath caught, then her hands trembled as she tapped it open. Lyra, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Things feel empty without you here. The station is quieter. I keep looking at the stars and wondering if you're looking too. I hope you're happy. I hope you didn't forget me. Her throat tightened. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. He hadn't forgotten. He was out there missing her too, carrying the same ache, the same silence. She laughed softly through her tears. Oh, Adrian. The fear that had kept her silent for months dissolved in an instant. She began to type back. Not a perfect letter, not something polished or careful, just raw words that spilled straight from her heart. I never forgot. I miss you too. Every day. I was just afraid to say it. Thank you for reaching out. The stars here are beautiful, but they're brighter knowing you're under them too. Her hand shook as she sent it. But this time she did not hesitate. For the first time since leaving, the world around her felt warmer. The silence had broken. The distance was still there, vast and cold. But she knew humanity's greatest gift, the courage to bridge it. And under the violet sky, Lyra smiled. Because hope, like humanity, always found a way back. Adrian woke to the soft chime of his console. His eyes opened slowly, still heavy with sleep. For a moment he thought it was only a system alert, another reminder from the station, but then he saw the blinking symbol, the one he had almost given up on ever seeing. A message. His heart leapt. His hands trembled as he reached for the console. It had been days since he had sent his own letter into the void, and he had tried not to expect anything. Expectation was dangerous. But now here it was, proof that his words had crossed the distance. Proof that she had read them. He tapped the screen. Her words filled his vision. I never forgot. I miss you too. Every day. I was just afraid to say it. Thank you for reaching out. The stars here are beautiful, but they're brighter knowing you're under them too. Adrian stared at the message, his chest tightening. He read it again and again, as if the letters might vanish if he blinked. She hadn't forgotten. She hadn't moved on. She still thought of him. He pressed his forehead to the console, letting out a shaky breath. The ache that had weighed on him for months began to ease. The silence that had wrapped around his heart cracked open. For a long while he couldn't even type. His hands shook too much. Finally he whispered aloud to himself, she's still there. She's still with me. When he found the strength, he began to write back. Lyra, your message means more than I can explain. I thought I lost you to the distance. I thought maybe I should stay silent forever. But hearing you missed me too, it feels like the station isn't so cold anymore. He paused, staring out the window at the endless sea of stars. Other species around him would have accepted the loss long ago. For them, distance was final. But humans were different. They carried hope like a flame, refusing to let it go out. Adrian continued typing. Maybe we are far apart, but I believe humans are meant to find each other again. We've always crossed oceans, deserts, even the void itself to stay connected. And I believe someday I'll see you again too. He sent the message before fear could stop him. Then he sat back, closing his eyes. The station was still the same, quiet corridors, humming engines, but he felt different. The loneliness was no longer endless. There was a thread now, invisible yet unbreakable, binding him to her. On the colony world, Lyra sat with her console close to her chest. She had been waiting, unsure if he would answer, unsure if his courage would last. When the reply came, her hands flew to open it. His words poured across the screen, filled with the warmth she remembered. She laughed softly, tears sliding down her cheeks. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like a stranger in this new world. She whispered into the violet night, "We'll see each other again." I know it. Neighbors passing by might have thought she was odd, smiling at nothing. But this was the human way, holding on to threads of hope until they became bridges strong enough to walk. That night, Adrian and Lyra both sat under their separate skies, typing long letters back and forth. They told stories of their days, of small joys, of small struggles. They sent jokes, memories, dreams. The distance was still there, but it no longer felt so heavy. Because the truth was this: humans had always been creatures of connection. They were stubborn in love, relentless in friendship. No matter the miles, no matter the stars, they always found ways to reach across the impossible. And as the hours passed, both of them felt the same quiet certainty. This was not the end. This was the beginning of finding each other again. The days on the station felt lighter now, though the distance still remained. Adrian worked his shifts as usual, checking power grids, repairing small leaks, answering endless reports. But at the end of every day, he had something to look forward to. A message, a reply, a thread of connection that made the long silence of space easier to bear. He and Lyra wrote to each other often now, sometimes long letters filled with memories and feelings, sometimes short notes, nothing more than "Are you okay?" or "The stars are bright tonight." Every word mattered. Every letter was a spark in the darkness. Still, the ache of distance lingered. Words on a screen were not the same as sitting side by side. He missed the sound of her laughter echoing in the same room. He missed how she would point at the stars with such wonder, as if each one was a friend. One night, as he leaned against the viewing window, Adrian whispered, "I just want to see you again." The stars gave no answer, but hope stirred in his chest. On her colony world, Lyra felt the same longing. The planet was beautiful, full of life, full of chances for growth, but beauty meant little when her heart felt half a galaxy away. She wrote to Adrian often, yet after each letter, she sat in silence, staring at the sky, wishing she could cross the distance with a single step. One evening, she wrote, "Adrian, do you ever think about what it would take to see each other again? I know it sounds impossible, but humans have always done the impossible. We've crossed oceans. We've walked on the moon. Why can't we cross this too?" When Adrian read those words, his heart beat faster. For days he had held the same thought, too afraid to speak it. He wanted to believe, but he also knew the reality. Travel between systems took time, money, and permission. Ordinary people like them could not simply buy a ship and leave. Yet humans did not stop because something was hard. He wrote back quickly, "I think about it every day. I don't know how, but I believe someday we will find a way. If there is even a small chance, I will fight for it, because you matter to me more than the distance." Lyra's hands shook as she read his words. Tears filled her eyes, but they were not only from sadness. They were from hope, the powerful kind that humans carried even when logic said no. Days turned into weeks. They continued their letters, but now their words carried a new weight. The dream of meeting again. They talked about possibilities. Could she save credits for a transport? Could he request a transfer to her colony? Could they find work on the same world? Every plan felt fragile, uncertain, but every plan was also proof that they had not given up. Other species in the colony often told Lyra to accept things as they were. "Distance changes bonds," they said. "It is natural." But she shook her head and smiled. "Not for us. Not for humans. We hold on." On the station, Adrian's alien co-workers teased him for always checking his console, always smiling at messages from someone far away. "She is gone," they said. "Why torment yourself?" He only answered, "Because humans don't give up on the people who matter." That was the truth. Humanity's gift was not strength of body, not speed, not endless knowledge. Humanity's gift was stubbornness of heart. They hoped even when it hurt. They dreamed even when it seemed impossible. And so across the stars, two humans carried the same dream. A dream of meeting again, no matter the obstacles, no matter the distance. Adrian pressed his hand to the cold glass of the viewing window. Somewhere far away, Lyra was looking at the same stars. He whispered softly, "Wait for me." And under her violet sky, Lyra whispered the same words. They did not know how, they did not know when, but they knew this. Humans had always found each other across seas, across worlds, across the endless night. And they would again. Adrian sat in the quiet mess hall long after his shift ended. The station lights dimmed for the artificial night, but his mind refused to rest. The dream he shared with Lyra, to see her again, would not leave him alone. He turned her words over and over in his mind. Why can't we cross this too? It sounded so simple when she wrote it, but in truth it felt impossible. The credits required for travel were more than he had ever earned. Transfers between colonies were rare, and the Karan bureaucracy was cold and slow, and yet, humans were never known for surrendering to impossible. He opened his console, staring at the forms for transfer requests. The questions were endless: skills, reasons, recommendations. He had no certainty that anyone would approve him. But if he did nothing, the distance would remain forever. His hands trembled as he began to type. When he finished, the request glowed on the screen. His heart raced as he hit submit. For the first time in months, he felt like he had taken a step forward. Small, uncertain, but real. That night he wrote to Lyra, "I don't know if it will work, but I submitted a transfer request. Even if they reject it, I will try again. One step at a time will close this distance." When Lyra read the message, her chest tightened. She had dreamed of this moment, but seeing his courage made her feel her own heart burn with determination. She sat on her balcony, the violet sky stretching endlessly above, and whispered, "If he can fight, then so can I." She pulled up her own console and checked the listings for transport ships. The prices were staggering, more than she had saved since moving here. But instead of closing the screen, she began a new plan. She would take extra shifts at the colony hospital. She would cut her spending to the bare minimum. Every credit would go into a small account labeled only home. The next day, when she wrote to Adrian, she told him, "I've started saving. It might take time, but I'll make it. Humans always find their way back." Adrian read her words during his short break, and for the first time in years, he laughed. An unguarded, joyful laugh that startled his coworkers. They teased him for smiling at impossible dreams, but he only shook his head. "You don't understand. Humans make impossible dreams come true." Days stretched into weeks. The transfer office sent no reply, but Adrian refused to despair. He checked every morning, then threw himself into his work. Every repair, every long hour, he reminded himself, this was for something greater, for someone greater. On her colony, Lyra grew tired from her extra shifts, but she carried the exhaustion with pride. Each time she placed another credit in her account, she imagined it as a brick in the bridge between them. She told no one this hope was hers to protect, fragile yet fierce. Sometimes doubt crept in. What if his transfer was denied? What if her savings were never enough? But whenever fear rose, she remembered humanity's story. The long voyages across seas, the ships launched into space, with nothing but faith. The countless times humans had looked at the unknown and said, "We will go anyway." And each time she read Adrian's messages full of warmth and stubborn courage, she knew the same truth. Distance could wound, but it could not destroy, not if they fought. One night she sent him a short message. "Adrian, promise me this. No matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it is, we won't stop trying." He read it under the quiet hum of the station's engines. Slowly he smiled and typed back, "I promise. That's what it means to be human." And across the stars, two hearts carried the same vow. The distance was still vast, but now it was no longer endless, because the first step had been taken, and humans, once they began walking, never stopped until they reached each other. Adrian checked his console every morning, waiting for news from the transfer office. Weeks had passed since he submitted his request. Each day, hope flickered, fragile but alive. He dreamed of waking up to the words approved shining on the screen. But one morning, the reply finally came. And it was not what he wanted. Request denied. His chest tightened. He read the message again, but the letters didn't change. The officials had decided his skills were more valuable on the station. No transfer, no chance to move closer to Lyra. His dream collapsed like fragile glass. For a long while, he just sat there, staring at the denial. Around him, the station bustled with the same routine, footsteps in the corridor, engines humming. But to Adrian, everything felt heavier. The distance between him and Lyra had grown again. That evening, he wrote to her. His fingers shook as he typed, "Lyra, they rejected my request. I tried, but they won't let me leave. I don't know what else to do." When Lyra read the message, her heart sank. She had been saving every credit, holding on to his courage to fuel her own. Now it felt as though the path forward had been cut away. She sat on her balcony, the violet sky above her offering no comfort. The silence of the colony pressed against her chest. She wanted to give up. For a moment, she almost closed her savings account, almost let the dream fade, but then she remembered his promise. No matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it is, we won't stop trying. She wiped her tears and wrote back quickly, "Adrian, listen to me. This is only one answer, not the end. Humans don't stop after one failure. We keep fighting. I'll keep saving. You'll try again. We'll find another way. Please don't lose hope." When Adrian read her reply, he felt warmth push back the cold weight in his chest. She still believed. She still carried the fire. If she could hold it, so could he. That night, he sat by the viewing window, staring at the endless stars. He thought about the generations before him. Humans who had crossed oceans in fragile ships. Humans who had built homes on barren worlds. Humans who had looked at the impossible and said, "We'll go anyway," and he realized one denial was not the end. It was only another wall. Walls could be broken. He wrote back, "You're right. We'll keep trying. No one can tell us this is impossible. Not when we are human. We'll find another path. I promise you." Lyra smiled through her tears when she read it. She placed another handful of credits into her account. Each coin felt heavier with meaning. Each one was a step toward him. The days that followed were hard. Adrian applied again, this time through a different channel, adding more documents, more proof of his worth. He knew they might say no again, but he refused to stop. Lyra kept working extra shifts, exhaustion tugging at her body. But every credit reminded her of the vow they had made. Sometimes, doubt crept in. Sometimes the distance felt unbearable, but each time they exchanged messages, the hope returned. A hope uniquely human, stubborn, unyielding, alive even in sorrow. Other species on the station and colony shook their heads at their persistence. "Why torture yourselves?" they asked. "Distance changes bonds. Accept it." But Adrian and Lyra only smiled. Not for us. Not for humans. Because to be human was to feel the ache of distance and to fight against it. And even in failure, they carried the same truth. The stars could not stop them forever. Adrian's second transfer request was denied. His third was ignored. Each rejection pressed heavier on his heart, but he did not stop. Every denial was another wall, and humans had never let walls last forever. Meanwhile, Lyra's savings grew slowly, coin by coin, credit by credit. Her hands ached from long shifts at the hospital. Her body tired, but each deposit into her account was fuel for her soul. She carried Adrian's words with her every day. "No one can tell us this is impossible. Not when we are human." Months passed. The distance remained, but their bond only grew stronger. They wrote almost every night, sending each other strength when one felt weak, sending jokes when sadness grew heavy. To anyone else, their dream seemed foolish. But to them, it was a vow carved into their very being. Then one ordinary evening, something changed. Adrian received a message from the station's central office. He opened it slowly, half expecting another denial. But this time the words were different. Special transfer granted. Temporary leave approved for 6 months under personal expense. Travel permitted if arrangements can be made. His heart stopped. For a moment he thought it was a mistake, some cruel trick. But the stamp of approval glowed on the screen. It was real. Adrian leapt to his feet, laughter bursting from his chest. He didn't care that others in the mess hall turned to stare. He didn't care that his co-workers whispered. All that mattered was this. The door was open. His fingers flew across the console as he sent the message to Lyra. "It's happening." They approved it. "I can come. Lyra, I'm coming to you." On her colony world, Lyra was finishing a late shift when the alert rang. She wiped sweat from her forehead and opened the console. As she read his words, her knees weakened. Tears filled her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. She laughed softly, covering her mouth with trembling hands. "He's coming. After all this time, he's coming." She sent her reply with shaking fingers. "Adrian, I'll be waiting." The sky is brighter already. The weeks that followed were a blur of preparation. Adrian scraped together every credit he had, selling belongings, taking on extra shifts. Lyra cleaned her small home, making it ready, her heart racing each day. The journey would not be easy. It would take weeks of travel across dangerous routes. But nothing could stop them now. At last the day arrived. Adrian boarded the transport ship, the hum of its engines vibrating in his chest. As the ship pulled away from the station, he pressed his face to the viewing glass. For years he had stared at the stars, wishing to cross them. Now at last he was moving. Toward her. Toward home. The journey was long, but hope carried him through. He wrote messages to Lyra whenever the signal allowed, and she answered with words that warmed his tired heart. Finally, the ship descended onto her colony. The violet sky stretched wide as Adrian stepped onto the soil. His legs shook, not from the long journey, but from the weight of the moment. He scanned the crowd, searching, breath caught in his chest, and then he saw her. Lyra stood near the landing zone, her eyes wide, her hands trembling. For a moment they only stared at each other, frozen by the flood of emotions. Then without thought they ran. When they collided, it was not with grace but with desperation, arms wrapping tightly, faces pressed together, laughter and tears mixing in one raw, human sound. "I told you," Adrian whispered, his voice breaking. "Distance can't stop us." "And I told you," Lyra answered, clutching him as if she would never let go. Humans always find their way back. The sky stretched endless above them, stars waiting for nightfall. The universe was vast, full of cold silence, but here, in that moment, two humans had proven what their kind had always known. No distance is too great. No silence is too deep. No wall is unbreakable, because humans carry hope like fire, and fire always finds a way to burn.